Ladies and gentlemen, take a look at my brand new 2023 Mazda CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus. Now, I finally embraced my old age after driving a small two-door sports car since I was 22. 10 years later, I'm like, you know what? It's time to act my goddamn age. And I got a little Mazda CUV. And I've been a sports car purist for quite some time now. I always thought CUVs were the enemy. And yet here I am, and I gotta say, I'm actually enjoying it a lot more than I expected. Now, I'm gonna tell you my first impressions, why I got this car, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and hopefully you guys find that useful. So, first of all, why did I go with a Mazda CX-50? I've been looking for a more practical vehicle for about a year now. I got on the wait list for a Lexus IS 500 about a year ago, back in December. And when I finally test drove one, which you can see the video right up here, I realized it wasn't the car for me. So then I looked at the BMW M340i, and I actually like that car a lot. Definitely more than the IS 500. But the issue there is that it's not as practical, right? That car is really fun to drive. It's a sporty sedan, but if I'm gonna have two sports cars, because I'm getting a Lotus Emira next year, then the third car should be something more practical and comfortable. This has a lot of space. I comfortably sat me and 3 of my friends yesterday, and plenty of boot space. Now I can go to Costco and not have to ask myself, can I fit this in my car when I buy something? And with these seats folded down, I can actually fit my full-size 58 centimeter road bike in the back of this trunk. So the practicality is really what sold me. A big part of that too is that I'm trying to get a dog, and if it's a medium-sized dog, having a larger vehicle like this is definitely beneficial. Now, it took me about a month to find this vehicle because here in Vegas, all 3 Mazda dealerships were extremely painful to work with. They all played games with me. They all required some type of markup, and it was a pain in the butt. So I looked at San Diego, looked at the Bay Area, looked at Sacramento. I found this at Mazda of Elk Grove. Got it for MSRP. They installed these door edge guards, which I thought are completely nonsense and I don't want them. They tried charging me $400. I said, no, remove it or don't charge me, and they decided not to charge me for it. So I got the car MSRP. The only options I added were these accessories, this cargo mat because I put my bike back here, and then also the cover here in case I want to, you know, cover this so that people can't see inside my car and you know, try to steal my valuables. So overall, I'm very impressed by the vehicle because I'm not used to driving something that's so comfortable and practical. I'm used to sports cars. And with that said, take everything I say with a grain of salt because I'm used to, again, more sportier cars. What I will say is that this car is very comfortable to me. The suspension is a little bit harsher than other vehicles in the class, absolutely, without doubt. But again, to me, it feels plenty comfortable. The interior space too. The interior of Mazdas, modern Mazdas, is really impressive, I gotta say. Like the fit and finish, the quality of everything, having tactile, you know, even just like the clicking sensation of these HVAC controls. The Mazda infotainment I think is fantastic, obviously inspired by BMW's iDrive, but at least they have this small little volume knob, which I appreciate. The BMW M3 I drove yesterday did not have that. And overall, it's just a very nice place to be. I was very particular with getting the polymetal gray exterior with this terracotta tan interior in the Turbo Premium Plus model, either the polymetal or the zircon sand, but I really wanted this leather because I think it really gives it a much better feel, I think, a more premium feel than having just all black. But that's obviously up for personal preference. This may sound like heresy, but I really do believe that this Mazda CX-50 interior, $40,000 SUV, is a much nicer interior than the Lexus IS 500 as an example. But again, that Lexus IS 500 is pretty dated. It's not, you know, if you look at a newer Lexus interior, it's not gonna be the same comparison. But I'm really satisfied with this car. It drives quite well for a CUV. It's on the sportier side. Now, think of it as like a budget and kind of crappy Porsche Macan with the way that it drives. And what I mean by that is it tries to be sporty, it tries to handle the turns well, and it does for a CUV, but the ride is a little bit harsher than you might want it to be. And if you really push it, the rear suspension is a torsion beam. It's not independent rear suspension. And you can feel that when you're getting the car, when you're pushing it a little bit harder. The Porsche Macan is a feat of engineering that is hard to believe because that car handles like a hatchback. This definitely handles more like a CUV. There's a common complaint about the NVH, or I should rather say, just the tire noise when you're at highway speeds. I find it to be quite quiet, actually. Again, I'm used to sports cars. According to my Apple Watch, it's 65 decibels when I'm cruising at 75 miles an hour. And that is the same as I've tested the Honda competitors at, and even the Lexus IS500 might be 1 or 2 decibels quieter, but it's pretty close. Now, when I was cross-shopping this vehicle, I did not look at the traditional competitors, right? I went IS500, BMW M340i, and then I ended up on a Mazda CX-50. And part of the reason is that the other competitors in this space, they just didn't really excite me. I really love the styling of this. I think for a CUV, it's really quite handsome, as handsome as a CUV can be. And the interior in this, I mean, I love Mazda interiors. They do it so well, so right. They definitely punch way above their class. This feels more like a premium or luxury interior, in my opinion, compared to things like Toyota and Honda. And if I'm being honest, a big part of this is experimentation. I've been used to driving the FR-S GR86 for almost 10 years. So what is it like to own a second vehicle and have that second vehicle be in a different class? Something that's more comfortable. Will I want to go on more road trips, which is something that I used to just take rental cars on because I didn't like taking the FR-S or the GR86. And what I can tell you so far is having a second vehicle is so clutch, especially when you track your other vehicle. The reason being that many times from the racetrack, I go pretty hard on the brakes and I don't always let them warm up. So I would get warped rotors pretty frequently. And I had to replace it, I think 3, maybe even 4 times on my FR-S. And now my GR86 rotors are warped for the first time. So I need to replace those. So having another vehicle to drive when you need to either put the car on a lift or if you just don't want to drive the car is really, really nice to have. The other thing is that small sports cars really egg me on. It is so hard to not drive like a jackass when I'm driving a small sports car. I want to oversteer every single time I drive, at least once, but usually many, many times. And this just doesn't bring that out in me. I drive like an old man. I am, going 5, 10 above the speed limit, taking corners at a reasonable pace. I'm not trying to squeal the tires or get oversteer at all in this thing. But it's not all good. There are some things I definitely don't like. Number one, the Turbo Premium Plus model. One thing I was really looking forward to with this highest end trim is that it includes a wireless phone charger. But the wireless phone charger is pretty useless. I just put my phone right there, and I have a green light right now indicating that it's charging. And you can see that it's charging right here as well. But if you give it a few minutes, it'll give me an error message that wireless charging is not available, and then it stops. So that largely defeats the purpose, right? There it is. Wireless charging is unavailable. The other thing that doesn't bother me that much, but I know is a big deal to a lot of people, is fuel efficiency. This averages in the low 20s, at least in my experience, at 786 miles, which might change, of course, as the engine gets more worn in. But initially I was using 91 octane, and now I'm at 87 because this engine will take both, and it'll alter the timing and increase the power and torque with the 91 and decrease it with the 87. With the 87, I can definitely notice a substantial decrease in the torque and power, so I will be putting in 91 only moving forward. Because it actually feels a little bit sluggish like this. I'm used to it with the 91. And with the 91, the engine feels pretty peppy. I don't feel like this car needs more power because, again, it's a small CUV, and I'm not trying to, drive like a jackass. The other thing reviewers bring up is the transmission. It's a traditional 6-speed automatic, and at least it's not a CVT. But many of our viewers complain that it needs an 8 or a 10. I mean, hey, this is 2022, stop being so dated. I disagree. So first you need to ask yourself, why are more speeds better? Two things. Number one is that it helps with performance, with acceleration and such. And number two, fuel efficiency. So when you're on the highway, you can be at a really low RPM and not be going through fuel at a higher rate. But neither of those is a problem with this 6-speed, because this engine is so torquey down low that you often only need to downshift one gear, if that, to overtake. So that's eliminated. And then also at highway speeds, when I'm cruising at 80 miles an hour, I'm at like 2,200 RPM. So there's actually no issue with the 6-speed transmission in my mind. It's smooth, it's responsive if you want to use the paddles here. It actually behaves perfectly adequately, and I don't think it's a weakness in this car at all whatsoever. The other thing people bring up is the steering. They complain that it's too heavily weighted, and I get that. I don't have an issue with it because I'm used to the sportier kind of cars, which have heavier steering racks, but it can definitely take some getting used to in a vehicle like this. A small CUV, you don't really expect it to be like that. Obviously the steering has no feedback, but you wouldn't expect that in a small CUV like this. It's very accurate. I think the weighting is fine. The ratio is perfectly appropriate. And overall, all the inputs in the car actually feel nice. The throttle, the brake, the steering, everything just fades into the background, and you're not really paying attention and being annoyed by an extra touchy brake pedal that's non-linear and not easy to modulate, as I have experienced in some other recent car reviews. I think having this chrome metallic here rather than the more brushed look here is a little annoying because the reflection can get you in the eyes in the wrong way at times. I think the piano black on the center console here is not the best design choice. But these are pretty minor quibbles, right? The center gauge here, the display is pretty limited. You get a traditional looking speedometer, you get some drive information, and then you have this graphic as well. You would think that by having a high resolution, full color display there, that they would be a little bit more creative and have some other utilities, like maybe the sat nav over there as an example. The choice of stitching here, I think, is a bit unfortunate. It's reminiscent of horror movies, and I'm not the first person to say that. Yep, still corners like a CUV, but corners well for a CUV. They did a good job tuning this car. In day-to-day driving, you don't really even notice that it has a torsion beam rear suspension. What else can I tell you? I feel like it's very nice having the heads-up display. This Turbo Premium Plus also has traffic sign recognition, so it'll show a stop sign or the speed limit on the actual heads-up display, which is nice. The panoramic sunroof is nice from the rear when you're driving, though you can't really appreciate it because it's mostly behind you. The upgraded audio, this is the 12-speaker Bose. It sounds great. It's not the best that I've ever heard in a car, but it's definitely very good, and I don't feel it's lacking in any way. And it's gonna be nice having a vehicle that my family can drive when they come visit me here in Vegas, because this is automatic, it's practical, easy to drive, gonna be good for our road trips. And that's it for my initial thoughts. If you guys have any questions, let me know with a comment down below. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one.